Yeah, you're still delayed. The broadcast is live now.
All right. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Tyish Hall Brown, and thank you for joining us this evening. And we are on the Black Psychiatry channel. Today, we're discussing how you can leverage the performance triad to promote your behavioral health and wellness. This live stream is brought to you in part by the Howard University Resiliency and Recovery Project, which is supported by grant funding from the DC Department of Behavioral Health and SAMHSA. As part of this grant, we encourage you to complete a very brief follow-up survey using the link that we've dropped in the chat. Also, if you're a healthcare provider or a DC resident and would like to learn more about the educational or mental health services that are available through this project, please email us at howardrrproject@gmail.com and or check us out at howardrrproject on Instagram. Okay, before we begin tonight's topic, I'd like to introduce my co-discussants. With me tonight are David Hall, a noted sports performance and fitness coach, and Kristen Bell, a registered dietitian who works with professional athletes at Red Bull. Again, my name is Dr. Tyish Hall Brown. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with expertise in the area of sleep and stress. So let's get into it. I think of the performance triad as the foundation for optimal human function. There are three components that create the triad: sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Although each are important in their own right, when all the components are optimized concurrently, we maximize the physical, cognitive, and emotional aspects of our daily functioning, which leads us to our first question. How can people integrate these three components into busy lifestyles? David, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure thing. I think the best way to kind of go about it is, as far as like the fitness aspect is concerned, is mainly just kind of figure out exactly what you want out of like your fitness, and then set like short-term goals. So like if you set like minor goals, like if you want to, maybe if you want to lose like 5 or 10 pounds, maybe you start with a short-term goal like in a week, and then really and try to really figure out what's like important to you. So don't try to start off like with anything big, because then it becomes overwhelming and becomes daunting, and you won't want to follow through with it. So I think the best way to just kind of integrate in your lifestyles is to kind of, just kind of form those short-term goals, and it's something that's a lot more manageable.
Awesome, thank you. So manageable goals and for the short term. Kristen, what would you add to that for diets?
Yeah, what's funny is those principles can be implemented into diet as well. I feel like so many times people are all about, especially with diet, they want that immediate result. They want those immediate gratification. And so if they don't see results within a week, they're like, oh, whatever, it doesn't work. But there's a couple things that you can do to integrate it into your lifestyle to make it a little bit more permanent, because we have to remember in our mind that our health and our goals as far as what our weight wants to be and how healthy we want to be in all aspects is a marathon and not a sprint. So doing the small things every day add up a lot. So, eating a cheeseburger and French fries tonight is not going to kill you. But doing that every single day, maybe for lunch and dinner, ultimately you're making that decision for yourself. So any small changes that you can implement each day. Maybe you add too much sugar to your coffee. Maybe you just cut that down by half. Maybe you always have to have dessert after dinner. Maybe you only do it a couple nights a week. But giving yourself some grace and allowing yourself to slip up every now and then. No one wants to be 100% on their diet all the time. That's not fun. That's not part of our lifestyle, part of our culture. So doing the small things well add up significantly. Integrating it into your lifestyle as well would look something like packing snacks if you're going to be away from the house for more than 4 hours. Become like a professional kind of like meal prepper. And it's something that's really simple. There's little prep that goes into buying nuts from the store and keeping some in your car and having some at your house. Foods that don't have to go in the refrigerator, like beef jerky or trail mix, or even like a nutrition bar. Those things can allow you to be able to make better choices because they kind of took that hunger away. And so you can actually think out of logic instead of thinking out of emotion or convenience. So I think having those things around and planning a little bit ahead is going to help you be really successful. I also feel like if you can minimize the amount of added sugar that's in your diet, and if you think that you have too much sugar every single day, again, just try to cut it down by half each day, or cut it down a couple days a week, and you're going to start to see that little progress add up in big ways.
Awesome. I like that. And I guess if I was going to pull for sleep, I would agree with the things that you're saying as well. But I'd say for sleep, we have to prioritize sleep. I think often we just think it's going to happen. We're just going to get enough sleep in time. And we don't really think about the fact that, one, it's a 24-hour process. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something we should plan for. And two, that we do have busy schedules, but we schedule pretty much everything else into our day. We need to make sure that we're scheduling sleep into the day. And I think if you prioritize it and are intentional about getting 8 hours of sleep at least, then that'll help us to put it into our daily practice. And from there, you can look at, if I want to get 8 hours, I know I've got to wake up at a certain time. I can count backwards to figure out, okay, when should I start my bedtime routine to be consistent? And then what else can I get done during the day? So I think, again, being very intentional about getting our 8 hours and about setting a bedtime so that we can actually obtain that. And then I'd say the second thing that is important for sleep in terms of integrating that into our daily life is trying to be consistent. So really doing our best to be consistent with our bedtime and be consistent with a routine that we have before bedtime that helps us to unwind and to kind of settle and transition into sleep. Awesome. So I thought I had a little bit of a delay. Sorry there. All right. So thank you. Let's see, for our second question, what are the biggest myths about exercise, diet, and sleep that you've encountered? We all know that certain things are important, but what are some myths that are out there that you all would highlight and kind of debunk? Kristen, you want to start?
Sure. I'll go through these kind of briefly, but there are like 6 main ones that I hear often. The first one is eating healthy is too expensive. And it's not. The amount of money, if you were to add up how much you're spending by dining out, and if you relate that to how much it would take just to prepare a little bit more food at home, it actually comes out to cheaper depending on how much you're dining out. But majority of people, if you're a little bit more intentional about how you're preparing your food and doing a little bit more food from home, you'd be very surprised that it's not as expensive. The second one is everyone should follow a gluten-free diet. I hear that often. I do find a lot of the clients and athletes that I work with, once they do cut out gluten for a duration of time, they do feel a little bit less fatigued and they have a little bit more energy throughout the day and a little bit less bloated. That's not for everybody though. It's maybe 6 out of 10. So not everybody has to follow a gluten-free diet. And just because a label says gluten-free, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. So now you'll see these labels and it'll be ice cream and it's like gluten-free. And you're like, well, it's been gluten-free for 100 years. Like there's no gluten in it. But they try to trick you to think that it's a healthier option. A third one is skipping meals will help you lose weight. So this is not true. And a lot of times if you're skipping meals, you've gone such a long time during the day. And if you're not disciplined with the choices that you're making or have food prepared, you're going to overeat, you're going to make bad choices, or you're going to feel like you deserve it because you have kept yourself from calories for the last meal that you should have eaten. So you overeat at that next meal. So eating, just like with sleep, being consistent with your diet is ideal to be successful. And eating, every 3 to 4 hours is an ideal regimen. The fourth one is eating fat will make you fat. That is definitely not the case either. So eating those healthy fats, that macronutrient actually keeps you full more than protein or carbohydrates. So having that fat component in your diet is healthy for your blood-brain barrier. It's good for your joints and ligaments. Fat is so necessary for us to be healthy. So fat does not make you fat. And then I would probably say one of the other ones that I hear a lot is You shouldn't eat anything after 7 o'clock if you want to lose weight or reach your fitness goals. I completely disagree with that because some people stay up until 1 in the morning. And if they, maybe due to work or personal reasons, whatever it is, if they stop eating at 7 and you're going to bed hungry, then you're not going to have a restful sleep. And the sleep is going to help you recover for the next day's workout and for a productive work day. So my rule of thumb is I'm trying to leave 90 minutes to 2 hours before you go to bed. That's ideal. And it's the choices that you're making before you go to bed is what matters. So most times people are going to eat like a carbohydrate option like toast or cereal or a sandwich. That's not the best way to end your day. Focusing on something that's a little bit more protein based or healthy fat based is more likely to increase your metabolism and help you have a more quality sleep and not wake up feeling a little bit fatigued or like a carb hangover. So maybe something like a Greek yogurt parfait, making a protein smoothie, having a little bit leftover dinner if the dinner is healthy with like protein and veggies. Those would be healthier options, but those are probably the 5 nutrition myths that I hear the most often that I have to clarify.
Perfect. Dave, what would you say?
Yeah, I think on the fitness side, I think one, like, I mean, you kind of think of on the cardiovascular side of it, a lot of people think they have to kind of go do these high intensity cardiovascular like regiments, like going out for like, going sprinting or running these long distances or whatnot. But it doesn't always have to be like this high intensity. You can kind of accomplish a lot of the same thing by just, even if you go for a walk for like 15, 20 minutes a day, it doesn't have to be something super strenuous every time. And then, or like, I mean, if you just wanted to go ride the bike or what have you, but it doesn't need to be like these super high intense workouts like on a regular basis. Not everybody is at that level. So you have to kind of figure out what's right for you and kind of do what's right for you and not try to like live up to what somebody else is doing. I think another one of the big myths I see in the fitness side of things, people kind of get intimidated by workouts that are, these hour-long workouts or whatnot. You don't have to work out for an hour. I mean, that's typically when people go to the gym or they see people with a trainer or something, they see they're working out for like this 45 to 60 minutes. You can get like a good effective workout in 15 to 20 minutes. If that's the time you have, like you can get something good in that period of time. And after all, something's better than nothing at the end of the day, too. So don't feel like you have to kind of go and spend hours in the gym. A lot of times these people who are spending this time in the gym, they've been doing it for a long period of time. So their bodies are used to it and they've acclimated to that. So like especially if you're just starting out, like if you just need to go and get something in for like 15, 20 minutes, that's still going to be effective for you. So don't think you have to go and just spend, hour, 2 hours at the gym in order to, accomplish all your goals. You can get stuff done in, 15 to 30 minutes. I think those are the 2 main ones I see like on the fitness side. And just, kind of you always just have to kind of go at your own level and at your own pace and don't try to like do what other people are doing.
Great. So for the sleep side of things, there are 2 that I think I can highlight or I'd like to identify. The one is people often say, I don't really need 8 hours of sleep, that, I don't get 8 hours and I'm still able to function. So there are very few people that can function on sleep. And those who are functioning with less than 8 hours are often functioning, but they're not functioning at their optimal level. So it's not necessarily that you couldn't wake up and function and do things, but you're not doing things to the best of your abilities, or you're not functioning at your highest level when you're not getting enough sleep. And each day that you truncate your sleep, each day that you don't get your 8 hours, you're kind of building a sleep debt. And at some point, you'll have to catch up. And so the myth is that you don't need 8 hours, but in truth, we all do need somewhere around 7 to 8 hours. It's right there. But definitely those who are getting less than 6 hours are putting their health and their mental health and their physical health at risk. The second myth I'd say is that alcohol helps you sleep. A lot of people will, take a glass of wine to go to sleep, or will try to wind down with some alcohol. And although alcohol does help you initiate sleep, it's been linked to poor sleep quality and then early morning awakenings. So I would not advise drinking heavily in particular, but using alcohol as a method of trying to initiate and maintain sleep. There are other things you can absolutely do. Be some mindfulness, some deep breathing, some relaxation training, do a journal, listen to some music. There's so many other options that you can do right before bed that I would recommend something like that instead. All right. So if we had to look at all of them together, right, we're saying well, I was going to go through the myths, but if we were all looking at the myths, I'd say that one of the big things that people worry about often is, what if I start a routine, right? I'm doing a routine, I have a lot going on, and then all of a sudden I miss a day, I slip. Does that mean that I just scrap everything altogether? Or does that mean that, I'm terrible and I'll never be able to do this? A lot of catastrophic thinking starts to happen when we miss that one day or we get out of our routine. What can people do if a slip occurs in their routine? How can they recover from it? Dave, you want to start us off?
Something. I think it just kind of goes back to just how we were talking about on the first question, how do you integrate things? I think just kind of going back to those small goals and literally just to having those small wins. So even if if you're starting off a routine and you slip, just think of it, okay, try to get your 2 or 3 days of a win, and then give yourself that day of actually give yourself a built-in slip. So then now now you're not feeling bad about yourself. And then now you can kind of just jump back on the boat and on the following day and get right back on the wagon. So it's more so just kind of creating those small wins for yourself, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Everybody has their days where they don't feel like doing anything, and just so maybe on that day, maybe you put that as your built-in day, and then you say, okay, the next couple of days, I have to go for these next 2 days, and I have to make sure I get it in. But I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself, or don't feel it's the end of the world. Just you have that next day coming up, and then look at the following day as a win when you get your workout in. But just give yourself small wins.
Kristen?
Yeah, my strategy is pretty similar. Yeah, and I just think that people are so hard on themselves and they're afraid to fail, so they don't even start. This is what I have implemented in the past, and I call it the 2 treat meal rule. So throughout the week, and this is two is being pretty strict, so keep this in mind. But let's say you have 5 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's 35 meals. So allow yourself 2 or 3 meals that it's whatever you want. That doesn't mean it's however much you want. You still need to have a normal portion. But allow yourself these treat meals. Not only does it help mentally and behaviorally, you look forward to it. It kind of helps you hang on as the week goes. So I always say, pick a Wednesday to get you through midweek, and then have a treat meal Friday or Saturday night. And it's still within a normal portion, but 1 or 2 of them, depending on how many you decide that is realistic for yourself, one needs to be an unplanned treat meal and one needs to be a planned treat meal. The one is if someone brought, cupcakes, pizza into the office, and you're really doing good on your nutrition plan, but you just cave with the pizza and the cupcakes, and then you feel so guilty about it that it turns into another day and another day of eating unhealthy. But if you're like, oh yeah, that was my unplanned treat meal, okay, I'm good, I'm in a good place, you're gonna forgive yourself more, and you'll be more likely to stay on track. Now, the planned treat meal, that's still within a normal portion, but because you're looking forward to it, like I said, it kind of draws you and helps you for the next couple of days. So it does give you a little bit of grace. Sometimes I'm like, okay, do 2 treat meals and 1 unplanned treat snack. So if you really wanted that Danish with the coffee, note in your journal or write it in your phone. And that's something mentally just to make sure that you're staying on point and staying motivated, so that if you slip, you still, if you slipped at lunch, most of the time people will eat really unhealthy at dinner. Whereas what your mindfulness needs to be is, okay, I just had way too many calories for lunch. I can totally make up for it for dinner time by just having like a really big salad. And then you really won't see any derail in your progress. So if you can keep a couple of those strategies, then you will be more successful long-term. Because guess what? Christmas, birthdays, Thanksgiving, that comes every year for the rest of our lives. So if you don't have a plan in place, then you're almost setting yourself up to be completely indulgent that day. I encourage you to write down ahead of time what you plan to do. And if you can do that, then you're less likely to slip because you're trying to stick to the plan that you wrote out ahead of time. And then if you know one last strategy as far as if you slip, if you have a dinner or an anniversary or something planned that night, and you know that you really want to have a treat meal that night, eat really clean that day. That doesn't mean the whole day is a write-off. Have a nice omelet for breakfast, have a big chicken salad for lunch, and then for dinner, have a couple drinks, have an appetizer, have the mac and cheese that you really wanted, because over the course of the day, it really balances out. And then if you're incorporating some of these strategies, you'll be less likely to slip as often as you think you would be.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. I mean, I like the idea of having planned and unplanned treat meals. I always feel guilty when I fall off. So it's helpful to know that we can plan those ahead of time and give ourselves grace. And Dave, I love the fact that you just said, don't put pressure on yourself. And that's actually what I think about when I think about sleep. I think, we have to give ourselves some grace. There's a difference between what we read about in the textbooks, between what we know factually and what happens in reality on the day-to-day. It's rare that every day of every week that we get to bed at a certain time, every night. Just hard. Life happens. There might be a phone call that happens right as you're about to, go to bed, or you're right about to put your kids to bed, or something. You might get an email that you have to attend to. Something could happen, or something. You may have an after-school practice that you have to attend, which puts you getting home later, which means dinner's a little bit later. So things happen that we have to account for, and that we try to account for, but we can't always know ahead of time. So giving yourself some grace about that, but really trying to be as consistent as you possibly can. And so I definitely like the idea of not putting pressure on yourself. I think for sleep, it's the same thing. The more you try to force yourself to go to sleep, or you try to force yourself to have a sleep plan, the harder it is for you to have that. So being consistent and being kind of relaxed and, nice to yourself, so to speak, can be helpful for sleep. I would also add that restart that schedule as soon as you can. So even if you're off and, let's say you're on vacation and there's 3 days where you're out, when you get back home, try to then restart it. You may not be able to do it on vacation, but maybe you restart your bedtime routine and schedule as soon as you return home. So there's no time like the present to begin again. And I would say if you fall off, to try to come back as soon as you're able to and as soon as your schedule allows. But don't feel guilty about the time you spent on vacation or the time that you spent where you weren't able to necessarily maintain that consistent schedule. So there are a couple of questions that came up in the chat, and I thought it might be nice to take them before we move on to any other questions. The first one says, what is the best way to go about going for a lifestyle change? How do you train your body to do and want better? And that's true. Like our mind may say one thing, but our bodies don't always work with us. So how do we do that? What is your advice? Yeah, please.
Oh, go. I think again, it's just kind of finding, just maybe like that one or two things that you're, as far as like mentally, like what you're really wanting to change and like what you really want to focus on. Don't make it overwhelming. Just find one or two things you want to like focus on, like to start. Like, so maybe like, I mean, if you're starting like on a fitness regimen, maybe, like you want to drop however much weight. But I'd say just say your short-term goals, like, okay, like I'm gonna give myself 1 or 2 days this week where I'm just gonna work out. And and then start gradually like increasing it. So then where something that became something like a chore becomes more of a routine for you. So like just start small and just kind of build on that each week or each month. So give yourself some time for it to like kick in. So maybe you start for your first month, maybe just working out once or twice a week, just kind of getting something just slow where it's manageable. And then, then, okay, that once or twice a week, now you're like, oh, I can do more. So, just kind of playing those little mental tricks with your mind, just like, okay, like now, like there's 1 or 2 times a week isn't really that bad. So now let's try to add a third day in. And so now that third day becomes into 4, and then the 4 becomes into 5, or whatever you need for that week. But that's how you start gradually making it like a lifestyle. You just, one thing at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to think you have to go all in, 5 days a week, starting a change. Start slow, and then you work your way up from that.
Mm.
I would agree with that. What you have to find what is motivating you, and if it's outside environment or pressure, you're going to have a hard time to succeed. I often get people be like, oh my gosh, will you talk to my husband? He needs to lose weight. Or you talk to my wife, like she just has a really unhealthy diet. I'm like, she needs to come to me, or he needs to come to me, because oftentimes when it's someone else coming, they're not going to follow through because they don't want it. You have to want it. And I would say from a diet perspective, write your food down in a journal for 1 day. Write it down every single time you eat, anytime you put anything in your mouth. And I always ask the clients to do that for me, but most of the time it's more for them than it is me, because they're like, dang, I didn't realize some of these choices that I was making. And then look at that and be like, what are 2 things? That doesn't mean you need to cut out everything. What are 2 things I can cut down? What is something that I can swap out? Because most of the time, if you're taking something out, you replace it with something else. That's why so many people are scared. Like if they're smokers, they're like, yeah, well, if I quit smoking, I'm just gonna gain weight because I'm just gonna eat. So it's like David said, it's changing your environment so that these things become habit. So if you were a smoker and you're really trying to quit, why does that mean that you're eating fast food and cookies all the time? Like maybe that's a time where you're like, no, I'm going for a walk for 5 minutes every time I'm starting to feel a temptation. So changing your environment is the number 1 way for you to be the most successful. So who are you surrounding yourself with? Find a group, find a club, find a walking club, whatever it is that's going to encourage you to be better, a better version of yourself. And maybe that means that you have to get rid of a few friends, or maybe just not, talk to them as much. Start to surround yourself with the right people. Open up every single cupboard, your refrigerator, and what are the things that you need to take out so that you can be successful? Because if you have a tub of ice cream in your freezer, and every time you open up your freezer, you see it, you can open up your freezer. You can only open it up so many times before you're like, I can't take it anymore. I have to have some of that ice cream. But if the ice cream wasn't there, then you wouldn't have it. So make it inconvenient for yourself. If you really want ice cream, you get 1 serving when you go to Yogurtland and you don't bring any back home. You got your fix. You had your planned treat, but it's not in your environment where you're sitting home at night tempted to eat all of these foods that are calling your name in your kitchen.
Oh, that's great. I think it's easier said than done to not have the discipline in the house, particularly if you have other people around you. What do you suggest for that? So again, I know you said you can get rid of some of your friends if they're not on your weight loss journey with you, or but sometimes your family's there, right? Sometimes it's a husband, sometimes it's kids. What do you can't get rid of them?
No, that's true. You can't. And I got 2 young babies, so I get it. I'm like, I never had goldfish and graham crackers in my house when I didn't have children. There's a couple things that you can do. Designate a cupboard for snacks that are tempting for you, or that maybe they are not given up, but you know that you need to give it up. So that cupboard is off limits. Also making things harder to visually see. So for example, if that ice cream was in, like one of the little twist tie plastic grocery bags, just that motion of 1, you're not able to see it as easily. And 2, it's wrapped in something. Just that simple motion of having to untie something will actually deter you from being as tempted. I'll tell you this really quick. It was so interesting. There was this study where it was like Secretary's Day, and they put like chocolates for the secretaries on top of their desk. And they ate an average of 12 a day because it's literally right there and you just grab it, right? And then what they did is they put it the next week or the next couple days, they put it in the drawer, like in the file drawer, and they ate 3 less because that motion of like opening the drawer, and they also couldn't see it. But then what they did is they put it, the first two were in a glass container, and this one was like in a solid container, and it was just on the file cabinet. So you actually just had to stand up and walk around your desk to grab it, and they only ate 3 a day. So it's like, set your environment up to eat less. If that candy is right, like right when I open up the fridge and I smell like unhealthy food, good luck. But if I open it up and I have like the sliced and prepared fruit and vegetables that are in clear containers right at eyesight, I'm like, oh, I guess I could have this with like some dip and guacamole or something. So how does your fridge look? How do your cupboards look? And that's a reflection. Your body composition is a reflection of what you're putting in your body. And what you're putting in your body is what is in your environment. So what choices are you making? It starts at home.
Yeah, no, that's great. I don't know how I followed that with sleep. I mean, with sleep, it's an incremental adjustment as well. So if you're going to bed at like midnight or you're going to bed at 1 a.m., you can't expect all of a sudden to start going to bed at 10:30. Your body does need to adjust, and you do need to take it slowly. So let's say you have just pick midnight. You have a midnight bedtime. Instead of expecting to start going to sleep at 10:30, I'm going to start at 11:30. I'm going to take a little bit of time, about a half an hour off of my old bedtime, and see if I can push my bedtime back slowly to a more reasonable time when I'm able to get enough sleep, in 8 hours in the time that I have available. So I'd say that's one way of fitting it in. And again, I think it's really making time and scheduling. I know I've said that before, but we don't often think of sleep as a 24-hour process, and it really is. So really thinking about how we can fit it in can be helpful. And the more we're thinking about it, the more it kind of gets become part of our daily, routine habit, because we're thinking about it and we're doing it. So that way your body gets used to thinking about it. Your body gets used to, okay, it's time to transition. It's time to settle down. Like any habit, it'll grow on you. It'll start to form, but not immediately. You have to practice it, and you have to work through it for a couple of weeks, and then eventually your body does get in tune and get connected with the routine that you're setting up. I hate to go back to that. I want to go back to all of our conversation with everyone. I really liked when we were all together. And so, Dave, I wanted to ask you really quickly. You said that if we wanted to start to integrate it, we should pick 2 days and then slowly add them in. But what would we do during those 2 days? One of the questions that's in the chat said, what are some resources for effective workouts or things you can do without a trainer? So I'm going to start doing that. I wanted to do just, 2 days a week, but I don't even know where to begin. I don't have a trainer. What could I do to start that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things that you have at your disposal is your body. Your body can be used as a weight. So a lot of times, just doing like body weight exercises, like where you're just even just doing a squat, like even if you just got like a chair at your dining room table, and you sat down and stood up like 15 or 20 times, like 15 or 20 reps, and then did like 3 sets of that. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden, now you find yourself doing 3 sets of squats. You know what I mean? So then now and you're just doing body weight. And so then you can gradually increase something like that, where you're doing maybe like 30 a day. And then, your next time you work out, maybe increase it, add 10 more to that. So now you have 40. And then as well, like even if you had just stuff like in your refrigerator or just in your pantry, like a gallon of water, you could use that as a weight, just kind of picking it up, kind of maybe doing a curl or like rowing it up. But you can use the things like in your house as a way to kind of effectively get in a workout. So whether, again, like it's like squats, you can kind of lunge or get on your stairs and kind of walking up and down your steps. If you have stairs, or just kind of going to like a park and walking around, just kind of going for a long walk. But there's a lot of just like body weight exercises where you can just kind of use effectively to kind of get a good workout in, where you don't need to go to a gym, where you don't need a trainer, and you can just do on your own. Because a lot of the things you're doing in your day to day, like again, just like standing up and down from your chair or walking up and down the stairs, like those are all forms of exercise.
And do you feel like those are things you can do at work? Like, let's say if we are, someone's kind of a busy professional, they spend most of their time at work, and then when they're home, it's kind of maybe tending to the family, so they still don't even have that much time to take a break. What would you say, or what would you recommend for someone who's not in the office, someone who spends a lot of time at work?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like I feel like when you're at work, maybe on the hour you set a time, like you set an alarm. So like maybe 10 minutes to the hour. Then on that 10 minutes, maybe you just get up. Okay, now okay, in 10 minutes you actually can do a lot. So maybe it doesn't even have to be that full 10 minutes. So maybe give yourself 5 minutes. So now you're okay. In that 5 minutes, you can get in like 20 to 40 squats. Then maybe go if you can do a push up or or something, like kind of get from like your knees or a regular push up, maybe you're getting like 10 to 15 push ups in. And then now maybe you go and just maybe get like toe touches, or there's a variety of exercise, but set a timer, and like in that 10 minutes to that hour. And if you give yourself five of those 10 minutes, and then you do like a little 5 minute workout, and then you go right back to your desk, kind of sit down and get to your work. And then maybe on that next hour, 10 minutes to the hour, then now you get another 5 minutes in. So then now that 5 minutes, like on the hour, every hour. So now you go from 5 minute little workout increments, and now you have like a 30-minute workout within the day while you're just kind of sitting at your desk, getting up for those 5 minutes. And now you just have a 30-minute workout.
I like that. I like that a lot. And Kristen, what about those of us who, again, all day working and we want a snack? And I know you said we should build in a couple, but there's the vending machine across the way, or McDonald's is right outside our door, or
right?
What do you do?
Or the ice cream truck outside, like they're everywhere.
Exactly.
Right. And I always tell people like David, I mean, when it comes to clients, it's awesome with a trainer, David's going to tell you what to do for the hour, and then you get to go home. But with nutrition, it's the other, how many hours out of the day that you're awake, that you're faced with temptation, meal prepping, like what are your goals? Are you eating around your training session? And it's so hard. So I would say with all of the temptation, most of the time people make eating choices out of emotion or convenience. What do I feel like having? What's going to make me happy? Or what's close by? And the fast food restaurants are conveniently located off every exit, like for a reason. It's not like you have to go into the woods to find it. They want you to stop there. So if you don't start thinking about food as fuel, then you're always going to be thinking out of emotion or convenience. But what are we trying to do here? And it's not just about weight loss. It's about mental performance. It's about increasing your quality of sleep. I want to have energy to play with my kids. So what's your why, first of all? And so once you can kind of figure out your why, it really changes, is what I'm putting in my mouth right now getting me closer or further away from my goals? If you can start to change your mindset that way, then it makes it a little bit less tempting to go to the vending machine every day and eat the Snickers, because it's taking you further away from those goals. But those goals have got to be at the forefront of your mind. Write it down on a Post-it, put it on your laptop, make it your screensaver, do what you got to do to, at least, like you said earlier, start that lifestyle change, right? But I would say the things that are going to keep you from having cravings, because a lot of times it's the craving piece, right? If we are hungry and we have cravings, good luck. You're not making any choices. But if we can take away the hunger piece, now it's just discipline, and it's habit. So fat and protein are the two macronutrients that are going to decrease your cravings and keep you full the longest. So nuts, trail mix, beef jerky, a protein bar, a protein smoothie, Greek yogurt with fruit and nuts, hard-boiled eggs, lunch meat. I could go on and on. All of those are options that you can have that are in your drawer, in your fridge, in your car, so that everywhere you are, there's healthy options for you to be able to make those choices. And then you're actually, the less sugar that you incorporate in your day, the less you are going to crave it. We just got to get over that hump. We got to get that sugar decrease as much as possible. So hopefully all of those in your environment are less tempting for you to be able to make better choices.
That's great. That's really good. I mean, there's been so many challenges, I think, in the past year, so many different things that we think about. Sometimes you feel like you just can't take another challenge. So the idea of starting a weight loss regimen or starting a new diet, or even, trying to change my routine to make sure I have sleep, can be daunting. can you all think of any success stories recently, or any success stories that you've had where people have, have made changes where they didn't think they could, and particularly, given all the other challenges that have kind of transpired and come up through COVID?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll start.
Yeah.
I actually just recently did a virtual boot camp, and I had several people in the boot camp, but then one guy in particular, he had a busy schedule, during COVID, not really, doing exercising or moving a lot. So like others, he put on a bunch of weight, and was trying to figure out a way to kind of get the weight off, but at the same time, I mean, just like how Kristen was talking about, how like the fast food options are everywhere. They're on every corner. So, he found himself eating a lot of fast food and not being able to work out. And so we did the boot camp. So it was a one way to kind of hold him accountable in that sense. And he didn't necessarily always jump on the live boot camp, but just even having the resource to kind of go back and follow up with the workout, on his own time. He was able to kind of make it through like the 6 weeks and end up losing 12 pounds within that 6 weeks. And he really just kind of figured out I think a big thing is what Kristen was saying, is finding your why. Without that why, you're really not going to, it's going to be harder to accomplish just goals if it's just kind of like a surface goal and you don't really care about it too much, but it's really finding your why. So he just really was feeling uncomfortable about himself. And then, he found his why. And so he made that time, he put that time in just to kind of actually follow through. And he ended up losing the 12 pounds in 6 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. That is, 12 pounds is a lot. So, he's well on his way to the summer beach bod, it sounds like. That's awesome. Kristen, any success stories that you can think of or that come to mind?
So before I get to the success story, let me start with the unsuccess story. So I read this study, and I'm gonna make you guys guess. There was a study from like the health organization of the average weight gain for an American during the year of COVID. Go ahead and guess.
I'd say 15 to 20.
Okay.
Oh, I'd say 30. I thought I heard something really high.
27 pounds was the average weight gain during COVID. And I was like, well, it kind of makes sense. It's 2 pounds a month. Like 2 pounds a month.
Yeah, that is true.
And it creeps, and they're like, the number one reason was because a lot of people took up baking, and they're making like bread and baked goods and everything. I'm like, that's so funny. So if you think about it in the opposite, they're just making bread, like they're having a couple cookies, whatever. But what if we did like the opposite? Like your body actually can't recognize if you eat 20% more or 20% less. You're going to be like the same satiated like factor. So if we just dish up a little bit less, or eat or leave like several bites on our plate, or dish up a little bit less, then our body doesn't recognize it, but we're actually making small progress. Because what's 2 pounds a month of weight loss? It's like, oh, I only lost 2 pounds. But a friend of mine, and I'm getting to the positive part here, a friend of mine lost 25 pounds over the year of COVID. And we're like, what'd you do? He's like, man, I just ate a little bit less and ran a little bit more. And it really wasn't anything significant. But we always want to see like that huge drop on the scale, when most of the time in the beginning it's water anyways. But he just kept with it. He just like started running like a mile or 2 miles a day. And then it picked up. He's like, now I'm at 13. I could barely run a mile. And I just ate a little bit less. And he may have a really bad diet, but he ate less. And it's like, that's a huge piece. It really is. We can at least control how much we're putting in our mouth. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. We can either go like one side of the pendulum or the other. Small changes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I heard a lot about the weight gain over COVID, and know many people, including myself, who did put on weight over that time period. And I know we've all been struggling, trying to think of different ways to to mitigate that. I laugh. I love to bake. I don't often eat everything that I make, but I do love to bake. So giving up that as a pastime, I don't know if I can go down that road, or if I recommend it, but I love the idea of eating less, right? So what I do typically, I won't eat the whole cupcake. I'll cut it in half, or I'll quarter it so that I can taste it and make sure it tastes right before I'm giving it to whoever I'm giving it to. But try to get them out the house. Try to give them to some people.
Exactly.
right? But they're not just around my house, maybe I'm contributing to someone else's weight gain, but
Exactly.
Exactly.
and contribution.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So a success story with sleep that I can think of. I think at the start of this, a lot of people didn't have boundaries around their day, right? I think that people were at home all day long. They were, taking their work from their bedrooms. They were also, your house just became everything, right? You didn't have boundaries. And so there was one person in particular who just couldn't sleep. They were actually coming in because they were depressed. And because we know that, mood and sleep are connected as they are with diet and exercise as well. And so we started discussing, what does their day look like? What are you doing? What's happening? And realized that a little bit of structure within the day would go a long way for this person. So making sure that, okay, yes, you have your office space, but maybe your office space is in a different room than your bedroom. So instead of making your bedroom the place where you do all of your work, let's move it out of the bedroom and give a focus to another room so that when you get ready to go to sleep or when you're at home, you can think of your bedroom as something that you only use for sleep and sex. So they moved their office out of the bedroom area into like another space in the main room. And then the other thing that was really pivotal was starting the watching what they ate and what they did throughout the day. So not having any caffeine afternoon was really big, because they would have caffeine in the afternoon to stay awake, because they wanted to stay awake longer to get whatever work done that they were doing. And then that was just making it really difficult to fall asleep. And then we implemented a really short kind of bedtime routine where they would get off their computer like an hour before whatever their scheduled bedtime was, and then either read a book, listen to music, journal. A lot of times we get anxious or worried right before. Being able to write those thoughts down so they're not just rolling around our mind helps a whole lot. This person was able to do that. And then, make a reasonable bedtime that fed in the 8 hours. And they were, it worked. And the next day they were, not that same day, but when they came back in, this was probably over a course of like a month, they were able to see changes where they were feeling better during the day. They were recognizing that they weren't as tired. They were recognizing that their mood wasn't as kind of all over the place. At one point, their mood was, kind of all over the place, just down one day, excited, and like not being able to pay attention. So all those things kind of came into focus a little bit better for them. And then we were able to work on some other aspects. But I think really paying attention to what we're doing throughout the day, setting boundaries and structures around our sleep and around our day period, and then moving things out of the bedroom that aren't necessarily associated with sleep can be really helpful. So that's kind of my side of the success story. Oh gosh. So yeah, I think we could talk sleep all night, and I think we could talk about nutrition and exercise. I'm wondering, what are the biggest take homes that people should have? What are the things that, if we wanted to leave everyone with, kind of little pearls of wisdom, what would you say were the most important things or the most important strategies that they should think about or that they should know about?
Do you want me to start?
Sounds good.
Okay. I would say start with cutting out as much as possible added sugar and alcohol. Not only is that going to help you feel more motivated to train and sleep better, but it's also going to help with your metabolism. It's going to help you make better, more conscious decisions. And cutting down sugar is going to do a multitude of things. It's going to help with being a healthy weight. If you're at risk for diabetes, if you want more energy throughout the day, if you want less cravings and less crashes, then cutting down added sugar. The average person has about 187 grams of added sugar a day, and the recommendation is 40. One Mountain Dew has 52 grams. So you can see how quickly that can add up, and in our children. But the number one way that you're getting most sugar is through liquid, some type of beverage. So cutting down on alcohol and sugar. Set 2 days to do a little bit of meal prep. If you're going to try and go gung-ho and meal prep on Monday all the way till Sunday, you're going to get so sick of eating that particular dish. So I always say start on Sunday or Monday and cook some food to last you maybe till Wednesday or Thursday. and then cook again. And that doesn't mean that you have to have all these little containers with the exact same meal. Maybe that looks like buying a ready-made salad and some salmon burgers, and all you have to do is grill on both sides. Make it simple for yourself and make it realistic. Find foods that you enjoy. If you are going to start on this health journey with celery and cucumbers and think it's going to last, it's not. So be realistic and use spices, use seasonings, use different sauces to a minimum, and be creative so that you're not eating like a bland chicken breast and steamed broccoli, and that's so disgusting to do every single day. So be creative. And there's so many, there's millions of free recipes on the internet. So you could easily just type in one food and it'll give you a ton of different ideas there. And I would say, lastly, eat anti-inflammatory foods. And people are like, well, what does that even mean? So anti-inflammatory foods are foods that are colorful. They should go bad. They should mold. They're fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean proteins. Avoiding food in the middle of the aisles as much as you can, and shop the perimeter of the grocery store where it's lean proteins and fish and seafood, healthier meats. Avoid, like the deli, or avoid the bakery as much as possible. So if you can start small and just make a couple healthy choices every day and build on that, kind of like with the exercise plan that David was sharing, avoid sugar and alcohol, and do a little bit of meal prep, you will make a substantial difference in not only your nutrition, but your behavior, your emotional well-being, and your motivation.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Dave, what would you say?
Yeah, I just kind of stay on the same theme as far as, don't try to do it all in one day. It's going to be a process. Like the whole fitness lifestyle, it's going to take some time. So don't be too hard on yourself and thinking that, oh, I have to lose all this weight in a week or a month or, what have you. It's a process. So just know that going into it. And again, you just gradually build up, either, each week or each month. But again, just give yourself small wins. Like, it's like the average weight loss typically even for a week is maybe like 1 to 2 pounds, like as far as like healthy weight loss. So if you're trying to accomplish, trying to lose 5-10 pounds in a week, even if you were to do it, it's not necessarily the best for you. So just to remember, like slower is better. Like just kind of take your time. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and just take your time with it, and don't beat yourself up. And again, don't always think like you have to be like at a gym or working out for an hour. You have to find your own groove. Find what's right for you, what works for you. And if there's an activity that you like doing, like that could be your form of workout. So don't think of it like exercise has to be some kind of strenuous or some activity that you just, dread doing. Find a physical activity that you enjoy doing. Maybe that's how you start into your process, to your fitness journey. But don't try to do it all in one day, 1 week. It's going to take you months to kind of get exactly where you want to be.
Oh, that's great. All right. What can I add with sleep? I'll boil it down to 3 things. I'd say I agree. Start small. Perhaps there's 1 habit or 2 habits that you want to start to change with, as opposed to trying to change everything that's going on right now. I'd say make sure you give yourself grace. So if you miss a day or you stay up super late one day or you go on vacation or whatever, don't get too upset with yourself. You can start again the next day. You can start your routine the next day. And then the final thing is just be consistent. Sometimes we think we want to make this change and it should happen overnight. So tomorrow I'm going to go to bed at 8 and everything's going to be perfect. But we know that's not the case. So just try to be consistent with whatever your set time is, whatever your goal is, and eventually it'll turn into a habit. It's not something that just happens overnight. So I really want to thank our guests tonight, David and Kristen. It was great hanging out with you and talking about the Triad. I know we don't usually talk about it all together. Usually we're talking about one or the other, but they all feed so nicely into each other and are so interconnected that once they're all working kind of at the top of their game, as an individual, we're able to be as successful as possible. So recommending that we try to make sure that we hit each of these areas in your life. I think it'll do wonders for you. So again, just to reiterate, we have a survey, a follow-up survey that we would like you to complete. Again, the live stream is brought to you in part by Howard University Resiliency and Recovery Project, which is supported by grant funding from the DC Department of Behavioral Health and SAMHSA. And as a part of this grant, we encourage you to complete a very brief follow-up survey using the link that we've dropped in the chat. Also, if you're a healthcare provider or a DC resident and would like to learn more about the educational or mental health services that are available through this project, please email us at howardrrproject@gmail.com, or you can connect with us on Insta at Howard_RR Project. Thank you for your time and your attention. We hope that you have been able to take away some helpful tips and hints, that you stay motivated, and that you optimize and maximize your sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Take care. Have a good night.